Let's start in Saudi Arabia. A group of President Zelensky's closest advisors will sit down with some of Donald Trump's team, led by Secretary of State, the permanently startled Marco Rubio. Their task is to bring the war in Ukraine to an end, but it can't be a coincidence that Ukraine launched its biggest drone attack on Russia ever overnight. William, I wonder if this is just as simple as a message being sent by Ukraine that don't take us for granted, because all of the sound coming out of the US is Ukraine's got to concede stuff, Ukraine's got to concede stuff, we don't really care about Ukraine, they're the weak sister in this argument. Is it as straightforward as that, do you think, Ukraine trying to say there's nothing weak about us, we've been fighting this war and not losing it for 3 years?
I think it is largely that, absolutely. And it's a reminder that Ukraine is really gearing up a very big defense industry now with a lot of new innovation. They're able to produce vast numbers of drones now, longer range drones and seaborne drones. They're becoming one of the most advanced countries in the world on all that type of technology. They've got other things in train that are not ready yet, missile programs and so on. So it's a very innovative and resourceful country under a lot of pressure. And I think they are showing, yes, that they will be increasingly able to hit back, actually, the longer the war goes on. So that's a message to Trump and to Russia. But it's probably also that they have, of course, been under great pressure on the battlefield, particularly the last week with the Americans, and this very dangerous thing that the Trump administration has done of withdrawing intelligence sharing. And that means the Ukrainians are blind on the battlefield, really. So the Russians have been taking the opportunity to attack very hard. So I think this is also part of showing Ukrainians that, you know, that Ukraine can still has a chance, can still stick up for itself.
Do you know Marco Rubio, William? Have you come across him in your time in politics? Because he does look like a stand-in. He never quite looks like he's in control of the situation. Clearly, all decisions are made by Trump. Musk is a more senior figure, it feels like, in the administration than Rubio. There's a lot of talk about that in American media. What do you make of Rubio in all this?
Well, it's too early. To be fair, it's too early to say. I don't know him. I've met him briefly, but I can't say that I know him. But what I do know is that really nobody in the Trump administration is in control other than Trump, and he's in control in his very particular way of what he says each morning and what he puts out on Truth Social. Each day is the policy of the government. So they're all dancing to that tune. Marco Rubio, he probably wasn't comfortable at all with the big bust-up with Zelensky. In fact, he stayed completely quiet, if you remember, in that meeting while Vance and Trump were attacking Zelensky. And just like the Treasury Secretary probably isn't happy with all the tariff announcements, but they are all completely in awe of Donald Trump and dominated by him to a much greater extent than is normal in a US or any other administration. So he's just dancing to Trump's tune.
Keza, how optimistic do you feel? We're talking. There's a big week. You know, there's talks in Paris about the European military response, but all eyes are on Saudi Arabia. You know, they'll probably be signing this mineral deal. The Ukrainians and the US. Not that necessarily means a great deal. We were talking to Catherine Philp earlier about that. But movement is happening. Where do you feel on an optimism scale about it all?
I wouldn't say I was particularly optimistic, but I think there's no doubt we are in a slightly better position than we were on the night that we watched the White House, right? Like, things are substantially better than they were then. The question is, how much more further forward can it move? What prospect is there of a deal that Zelensky's prepared to sign that also meets the needs that Putin has? And, you know, he can largely just sit back and wait now and see what he's presented with as some sort of option for peace or option for a sustained ceasefire. He really seems to have all the cards right now.
There's no suggestion. I mean, we keep coming back to this question, and we keep asking it on this programme to the point of frustration. No one is talking about what Russia might have to concede in all this other than stopping fighting. Like, is that the big thing? Russia invades a country illegally, kills hundreds of thousands of people, commits war crimes, and their big concession at the table is, can you just stop fighting?
Absolutely, and there's zero suggestion that Russians would have to cede any of the ground that they've gained in recent months or even since the beginning of the conflict. We seem to be starting from a position that what Russia has occupied is now Russian territory, and it could be a question of what you advance from that point, not any sense of retreat, and that rather blows the mind still.
Yeah, does it blow your mind, William? Because that's the new normal, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. This is the whole problem with the Trump approach to this, that it can just end up rewarding aggression. And it's a reminder not to get overexcited about the prospects of peace. I mean, this is good today that the United States is talking directly to the Ukrainians, and they might get relations back together again to some extent. But to actually settle the war, the Ukrainians have to know that they are protected in some way against another Russian-launched war. And the Russians will want to know that actually Ukraine is not protected against that. So it all comes out, all of these talks will come down to that problem, which is why it always comes back to how will the United States guarantee in some way or not the future of Ukraine. They don't look like they want to do that, and that makes the war very, very hard to settle. So I think we may see a lot of talks in the coming weeks, but it's not, the odds are against achieving a peace agreement in the coming weeks.
One other thing, William, do you think Donald Trump is vulnerable economically? Because he's a very powerful man and he's been making the world leap and dance to his tune now for, 3 months, or even slightly before that, even before he took the office, but certainly in 2025. And he's been doing it from a position of strength. Everyone's rolled over and said what a powerful man he is. If the American economy is in trouble, if his tariffs lead to inflation, if cutting all of those civil servants lead to less money being spent in the economy, if the stock market is overvalued, particularly in tech shares, and then starts to tank, does that make his position slightly weaker, even on the global stage, never mind America?
Yes, it would make it weaker. This is the great risk that he's running. And the top concern of voters when they voted for Trump, as in other elections around the world last year, was the cost of living. So if the cost of living starts going up again, Trump will be in trouble just like any other government. And he could tip the United States into recession. That's why stock markets seems to be why they are falling this week. Nobody really knows, of course, because there isn't any actual precedent for this situation where one of the world's major economies is saying, oh, there's tariffs of 25% tomorrow. Oh, no, there isn't. And then a week later, yeah, there is, actually. What does business hate? It hates uncertainty. And Trump is generating a vast amount of uncertainty. So we don't know what will happen, but big economic risks. And I think he is so powerful and so flaunting that power and enjoying using that power that it is going to come back to hit him, that he's going to regret some of the things that he's doing now.